So what we're doing right now, we're going to remove the turbo on this 85 Mercedes 300D, and we're going to remove it. We're going to rebuild it. I'm pretty sure it's leaking quite a bit, leaking oil into the intake and through the exhaust. So we're going to take care of that. I bought a new kit on eBay. The first one I bought was actually only like $24, and it was the new improved design with the full circle bushing or whatever you want to call it. And it got stuck in customs and they refunded my money for it, so I bought another one. The next one I bought was I think $39, and so these things are cheap to overhaul, and so we're gonna just go ahead and put a kit in it. And let me turn the light on. We can look in there and see how oily it looks. All right, there's inside. It's pretty oily. You can see the whole turbo's oily. So, and then below it, it's all oily. The exhaust side of it is oily. So, we're going to see what we can to see if we can get the bolts out, the exhaust side of it, and get it out of here. And I don't think I showed y'all what I did for my PCV line. They just had a hose on it when I got it. I ordered the 2 elbows, and this is just 1/2 inch copper, and my bender would not go up this big, so, and I don't think it would have done more than a 90 anyway, if it would have. So this is what we came up with, and I'll still be looking for this piece, but I think that's a lot better than it was, and looks pretty good. So let me get the air cleaner off, and then we'll get down to the turbo. You know, it's pretty easy to get this thing apart or get down to it. You know, if you've never had the air cleaner assembly off, take the nut off here, undo your little snaps, and then there's 3 nuts that hold it on under the air filter. And you can take that whole assembly off, then you can look at the turbo right there, and we'll see if we can get those exhaust bolts, or we're going to take the front housing, front part of the turbo off from the kind of the exhaust housing side of it, or that's what we're going to attempt to do. Alright, so I've started undoing the bolts. I've undone the oil line to the turbo, 2 bolts that hold it, that's the feed line, and then there's a bracket, you know, hold down bracket right there, and did that. I've gotten 2 of the bolts out so far. What you want to do on these, they're on the exhaust side, so they've been subjected to heat and of course rust. You want to make sure you do not break these off. So I, you know, start to break them loose. Once they start to turn, I stop and turn them back just a little bit, and just slowly work them back and forth until I get them out. You don't want to break those off. So I've gotten, let's see, 3 of them out, and I've gotten this one that you have no clearance on loose. What I had to do to get it loose, took a 13mm, ground it really thin. Once you get it broken loose with this, you can flip over to your open end and do it. You don't want to get your wrench trapped in there. So there's not much room in there to work to get it out. So now I've got the ones on the bottom, which are not going to be fun to get to, but they shouldn't be too bad. So we got two down there. Crossing my fingers they don't break loose, or they don't break. And then we've got the drain on the turbo. It goes back in Volcan. Easiest way to get them out, get you a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, 13mm short socket, and just go up under the turbo and put it on the bolts and work them loose. And it works for both of them. You don't need long extensions up underneath. You just, I know some people do it that way, but to me it's easiest just to take this, something small that gets in there, and break it loose. And take them out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those out before I get any more of the housing bolts off. Alright, I was about to give up. I actually started undoing this. I was gonna start taking that off. This other clamp, the nut was turning on it, so I was gonna undo it here. And because I got all the bolts out or loose, this one's up here is not out yet, but it's loose. But the bottom one, you can see it right there, that one right there. Because of where it's located on the housing of the turbo, you cannot get a wrench on it, a boxed in wrench. Even one ground down this thin. And I'll show you how thin it has to be to get it on there. This one will go on there. And you can see I broke it. It has to be that thin to get it on there. And I tried another one. This is just a cheapie, probably made in China, but I ground a Craftsman down. It also broke. And you can only get to it from the bottom. Can't get to it from the top. So you're limited on your leverage down at the bottom because there's just no room to work down there. So I had kind of given up. And when I started running into frustrations getting that off, because I wanted to take this air cleaner bracket off, but it was fighting me, because to get to the bottom bolt on it, I needed to get this clamp off, and I couldn't get this clamp off because the nut was turning. I couldn't get vice grips on the nut because the air cleaner bracket was on, but I couldn't get the air cleaner bracket on because the clamp was in the way. So I was kind of screwed. And so I was out of frustration. I was like, well, there's got to be a better way. So what I ended up doing, and it's probably not an orthodox method, but it worked. The turbo, as you can see, is not where it was. What I did, I don't know if you can see down in there, right down there is the flange. I think that's the flange for the oil drain, and this is cast iron. This housing, I think it's cast iron. I don't think it's aluminum. Could be aluminum. I think it's cast iron though. Anyway, or maybe it is aluminum. We'll see once we get it out. I can't tell. Very gently, I took a flat punch and a hammer and tapped on the turbo and turned it clockwise. If you're looking at the front of it, turned it clockwise. And what that did, two things. One, it rotated the turbo around to where I could access this from the top. And two, it rotated the turbo around to where I can now get a boxed in wrench on it. Not even a ground down one, just a regular boxed in wrench. Fit on there just fine. I put a cheater wrench on it boom, it popped loose. And there's still not much room to work. You're kind of working right in here, but between this wrench and this wrench, using the boxed end, and this wrench, I could move it this motion here, and then it would bottom out against the turbo, pull it out. You know, and it wasn't enough to get the other wrench on it. I could get one, and I have my sequence. This one, then this one, then this one. Repeat the process over. Go back to this one, this one, this one. You know, and they were, or the notches were oriented in these wrenches just so that, you know, on those turns, I could get that sequence of wrenches in. And once I got it loose, I actually went to the bottom, because you don't have any leverage on the bottom, but you do have a little more swinging room, and got a open end wrench on it and loosened it up. I'm still in the process of loosening it up, but before I took it off, it's almost out. Before I took it off, I wanted to show y'all what it was, what I had figured out on it. And of course I took the front of the turbo off. I don't remember if I showed that, and I've just got a rag over it just to help protect it. Oh, and just to add to that, it was tight enough, like I said, I had to use a cheater to break it loose, but working on it on the bottom, no matter what, I tried every 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter wrench I had. Some of them pretty beefy. I've got these, which ended up being the best. These are, this one was made in West Germany, and if you take a look at it, just compare it. It's a 1/2 inch, of course it fits 13 millimeter. If you look at the beef on this wrench, there's just a lot more beef to it. Even getting that one on there, it was spreading. And so, you know, I had the thought, once I get the turbo off, I'm still going to have this issue. I'll have more room to work, but I'm still going to have this issue of that bolt being where you can't get a boxed in wrench on it. And so at that point, once I got it off, I might still would have had to spin the turbo around to be able to get a boxed in wrench on it to get that bolt broke loose. So, you know, if I'm gonna have to do that anyway, I might as well do it on the car and keep myself from having to take everything, all of the turbo off. You know, and just take the middle section out. So back to getting those bolts all the way out, and then we'll pull that section out. So I wasn't going to video putting it back on because it's pretty much like taking the turbo off. I did want to make a few notes. Do the compressor housing last, because you can get to your well, when I say last, yeah, it's pretty much last, but like your turbo drain tube is easier to get to with this off. What I did to get this on there, the first bolt I put in was that one that was the hardest to get out. I had the turbo rotated around, kind of like rotated around that, kind of like I did when I took it off, and I got that one to where it just started snugging up on the little clamp, well, and then rotated the turbo where it should be, got all the other bolts in, and then you want to tighten opposite corners so that it pulls it in straight. So, you know, start tightening, then jump over to another side, start tightening, you know, and just slowly run them up you know, I say all four sides, but kind of rotate around like that. And I did it without that, messing with that bottom bolt there. You know, I got it just kind of run up flush, I guess you could say, not tight, flush. Tightened everything else, got it all torqued down with everything else, and then went back with an open end and tightened down that one that was hard to get to. And of course, at that point, you know, the turbo's where it should be, and we're not putting crazy amounts of torque on it like it took to get them off, so the open end wrench is just fine. And the bolt that was down there, because I had, you know, I didn't round it off or anything, but you could tell where the open end had been putting pressure on it. I put that bolt right here at the top where it's easy to get to. And like I said, the turbo kit came with new bolts. I have no idea how good of bolts those are. These bolts, the heads on them are fine, none of them broke, and since they have lasted so long and they didn't break off in there, I put them back because chances are those are not as good a quality bolts, and if I have to take this off again, I'm afraid one of those will break off. So we put the original ones back in. Now all we have to do is put the compressor wheel housing on. I've got two new O-rings on there, on that little connector tube. So we're going to slip that on. We got to put our little O-ring, thin O-ring around here, and we'll slip it on. We've got our little hold down clamps that hold the housing on. Put those in our bolts. So let me get all those started and get all that together. So that doesn't look right. They gave me the wrong O-ring. It's one for one that has a bigger compressor wheel housing. I don't know if different applications that would have a bigger housing. I wouldn't have thought so, but maybe so. This is just it's a kit for a T3, T4, and some other, I don't know what that says, but maybe that's the gasket that fits a T4. All the internal parts were the same. You know, they all fit, but that's not right. And of course the nut, like I said, wasn't right. So two issues. I'm gonna go ahead, clean this up. There was no O-ring on it before. There was just some RTV. I guess somebody's been in here before. So I'm going to clean it up. Only choice I have is a thin coat of RTV around here, and I think it'll hold up just fine. And it's installed. One thing that makes this job a lot easier, well, it may be about impossible without it, is a stubby 1/2 inch or 13mm wrench. And there's just places you need to get in and turn a wrench that you don't have room to swing a big wrench. So it's one thing to keep in mind. So it's back together. I just got to put the air cleaner and stuff like that on it, and we're going to go modify the air intake tube so that it slips on easier without the seal rolling, and I'll show you what we're going to do there.